Hi, Alyssa. This is Linda. I am really sorry that your feedback was not in there, so now I am getting it done. First of all, let me tell you that your format looks really good. You have a heading, got your page number and last name, and you have a title. If I'm just looking at it and I was able to flip through it as pages, it looks like an essay. You've got paragraphs, you've indented. You actually have really strong skills with organization and writing transitions and topic sentences. So that's nice because I can't say that everybody's been able to do that very well. And you have an interesting topic, and it was really fun to read. I've got the way I've gone through this is I've made some marks. The green highlights indicate what I perceive to be the main ideas of a paragraph or the main idea of the entire essay. You can call this thesis, you can call this theme. It's kind of the lesson or the message of you as an author. So what I was looking for is kind of a green sentence per paragraph. And then I've got these red highlights, and the red highlights are things that I want you to kind of examine a little bit more closely. Perhaps it's the wording of the sentence or the clarity or the coherence in some way. Things to fix. And then the pink sentence, if I've highlighted anything in pink, it's just that I really love that sentence. It's like it's a very strong representation of your writing voice, and it just kind of made me giggle or laugh or smile because it was such a nice thing to read. So that's kind of how I've gone through it. There's some other marks in here which I'll talk about as I go through it. Oh, and then you'll see these little blue marks above it. These are areas where I want you to start new paragraphs, where it seems like you're breaking and starting a new idea. So you can examine those and see if you agree with me on that. Okay, so not to make you dizzy, but I'm going to come back to the top here and look at your introduction. So your introduction is fun to read. I love this first sentence. I'm going to mention one thing that I think is fairly common at this stage of writing, and that is the difference between conversational English and academic English or standard academic English. If you're a native English speaker, which I'm assuming that you are, then we have a tendency to use the same kind of language that we use when we're speaking to others in a conversation as we do in writing. Unfortunately, that's not always the best way to go. It's not that it's ungrammatical or even really like wrong per se, but in the standard academic English world, there are more precise and more kind of formalized ways of saying things. And so what I'm looking at, a lot of the things in here are mistakes that you're making because you are leaning more toward a conversational English, and I'm going to point that out to you. So for example, in this first sentence, everyone in my family insists that I was singing right when I popped out on the delivery table. That sounds like something that you would be telling us in a story, and when I read it, when I would hear you say it, I would have no question about it. In writing, however, the word right is an unnecessary word. It doesn't need to be there because it does nothing to complement or add to or modify or give more meaning to. It is just kind of a space filler. So we want to get rid of words like that. So everyone in my family insists that I was singing when I popped out on the delivery table. You don't need to have the word right in there. They swear my crying had a rhythm, beat, and tune to it. Although that may be stretching the truth a little, it is true that I have been musically inclined from a young age, especially when it came to singing. Now, the reason I have that circled is because this is another one of those words that gets overused in writing. Can be a relative term. Sometimes we use it as a pronoun unintentionally, and it's not a great thing to say. So, although I may be stretching the truth a little, it is true that I have been musically inclined from a young age. So we just want to replace that with an actual person, place, or thing. And in this case, that person is you. So although I may be stretching the truth a little, and that way we have a subject and a verb. Does that make sense? So subject would be I, maybe stretching is your verb, okay, or stretching the verb, okay? So the overall message in here, it's really easy to find. Singing has not only led me singing has not only let me express myself and see who I truly am, but it has also taught me the valuable lesson of not giving up on my passions during the process, which will stick with me forever. Okay, so if I were, your English teacher, which I am, I guess I'd call that your thesis. I'm going to zip down to the conclusion, so don't get dizzy. I'm going to go down to the bottom paragraph here. And here you have a similar ending to it, which I like. I like that we've got that idea back here in the beginning. And I would probably suggest that this sentence here is actually use this as the first sentence in your conclusion. Generally, we like to have that conclusion restate the thesis. And then I have a suggestion. Instead of the thesis, I think is right here. It is a way for me to express myself and be creative, and has taught me to never give up on something that I enjoy. Once again, that's kind of that conversational style of English. So I have a suggestion here. This is just, I try to just use your words. Singing has impacted my life because it is the way for me to express myself, to create, and to learn how to never give up. And then you can go on, I will stick to singing, and I will never let go again. You want to make sure that you have, that's a compound sentence, subject, two subjects, two verbs. So that's just a way to kind of clean that up. And I recommend, when I come back up here to your introduction, that you mention that process instead of just saying the words, the process. So singing, and maybe we can take out the negative. So let's see if I can, let me do that. I would maybe remove those two words there. They're not necessary. Singing lets me express myself, create, and let's see. Singing teaches me to express myself, to create, and to not give up on my passions through the process of developing or whatever, developing my voice but the process is kind of undefined. Okay, so we want to kind of clean that, have that kind of work with your concluding sentence. All right, so in the first paragraph, you are now going to go into a chronological telling of your journey or your identity, and you go all the way back to your young little self. And you could specify. Sometimes it's hard for the reader to know what a young age is. Maybe you could say, at the age of 4, you sound like this was very young. So I would say specify any information that you can give us. Some of the first instances that I can remember of singing is me performing. So, okay, this right here, some of the first instances that I can remember. Oops, sorry. Let's see if I get my little pen here to work. Okay, my computer is being lame. That I can remember of me singing is performing to my parents. So I would say something more like this. Music was the artistic element of myself. I performed for my parents and sister in the living room. I sang songs by Blondie and music from the Disney Princess soundtracks. Let's make it very impactful, very active voice. That I can remember as kind of a passive voice. I sang, I performed to my parents, singing, I karaoke'd, I don't know. On some occasions, I would even perform my original songs. I also made up my own songs that I could come up with on the spot, let's leave out all of these passive words, okay? It's one way to kind of clean this up a little bit. These performances were a way for me to show my family a fun and artistic side of me. Great. My mom was my main motivator. I'm going to actually suggest that you maybe start a new paragraph here, because you go from this little performance piece to your mother, and then you got this nice chunk of story here and chronology here. And I did have a question, and I think you could answer it earlier if you explain your age, and that is, at what point in your life were you 5? Were you 6? I was thinking you were older, but then you got down to 3rd grade when you were, so much older, and you had already given up singing at that point. So I would say maybe if you can give us a little bit more chronology information. This all works really well. Again, you've got this undefined relative pronoun word. This made me feel different. Your mom said to you, hey, you can sing, and this made me feel different. My mom's confidence in me made me feel different than I had felt before. Or did it embarrass you? I don't know what that is. So this is a good thing to, let's see if I can get this to show up again. Yeah, so, specify what you mean by this, okay? Because that could mean a couple of different things to your reader. Okay, next topic sentence. As I grew older, before singing was an influential part of my life, naturally I stray away from it. Okay, so there's some grammatical things wrong with this. You've got this kind of dangling fragment here. Then as I grew older, before singing was an influential part of my life. Singing had been. As I grew older, I strayed from singing. Okay. As I grew older, it's in spite of singing being a big part of my life, as I grew older, I strayed away from it. I think, don't assume that your reader is going to think that you're going to naturally stray away. This is questionable. I don't know that, I get what you're saying. I think kids don't know what they want to do when they're that young, but I think that this is a good topic sentence. It's just not a good sentence. Does that make sense? Like the content's right on, but the sentence is not written well. So we want to make sure that we have a subject and a verb. If you're going to do complex or compound sentences, then you need to make sure that you're not creating a comma splice and fragments. So as I grew older, I strayed from singing, even though it had been an influential part of my life. Joining elementary school, I don't think you join. When I was in elementary school, I didn't have as much interest in it as I did when I was younger. Now, at age 6, I would think you'd be in elementary school. So are you talking about as an older elementary school student? Once I got into the upper elementary grades, you could specify that some more. Okay. When you do titles, I just saw this, you want to put quotation marks around titles. So titles of songs. Quotation marks around titles of songs, okay? And if you're talking about The Polar Express, that's the title of a whole entire movie, and so that would actually be, titles of movies and books, etc., are italicized, okay? Italicized, okay. And all right, I'm getting too long here, so I'm going to zip onto the bottom. Same problem with this sentence as we talked about earlier. We've got this conversational fragment. Fast forward to the starting of middle school at 7th grade. That's not a transitional phrase. That is not even a dependent clause. There's no subject in there. So I decided that I wanted to pursue home economics instead of choosing choir. When I started middle school in 7th grade, I decided, so when I started middle school, comma, I decided that I wanted to pursue home economics. There we go. I love this sentence. Just love it. main idea. You might try to connect these two together into one sentence. Main idea, this is like where the turning point happens. This all works really well. This is great dialogue. This is another main idea. Start a new paragraph, and then I already talked to you about the end. So hopefully this will post to YouTube. Thank you so much.